Have you ever heard of Defending the Caveman?
No.
Okay.
Is it a song?
I'll explain it then.
Defending the caveman.
Dudes to Dads is a podcast to help men understand and navigate the transition of being a single dude into a family man. How do we make sense of it all? Well, we probably won't be able to, but let's go ahead and have some fun trying.
And we're back.
We are back.
I'm Jason Kreidman.
I'm Alan Bush.
And this is Dudes to Dads.
Dudes to Dads.
Alan, one of the exciting things I wanted to share with you today, since I haven't seen you in
A week.
it's been that long.
It's been that long.
We have downloads, which is kind of how we measure our podcast,
Right, from the podcatchers
From
at iTunes and Stitcher.
some seriously cool places.
Oh, cool.
I mean, we've got the place called Canada.
So exotic. Where is this place?
Okay. Australia, Slovakia, UK, Maldives.
Maldives. Oh.
Yeah, is that right? Maldives.
Yeah.
Taiwan, Switzerland, Latvia. I mean, seriously, how are these people finding us?
I don't know. Yeah, like Slovakia. It's next to Czech Republic.
Yeah, I mean, that is awesome.
Yeah.
It's just amazing that.
Where's Maldives?
I don't know, but is it close to Minnesota?
Maldives Brewery.
Yeah. No, it's really cool. I was looking at the statistics and just seeing that people from all over the world are listening to this. And that's really, really cool, because what it means is dads need help everywhere.
Exactly.
You know?
This is what we're all bound by, is the fact that everyone, and that's actually a really good point, because I know originally the group started in a San Diego location, and you had a small following that would come to these things, and this, I think, was even reinforced by some of the people here that were part of the group. You kind of asked their opinion. Would you want to hear this? And people were like, yeah, this would be a good idea. So think about.
Well, a lot of people don't want to be in person.
Yeah,
they want to hear.
They
something.
Want to hear the advice on what other dads are going through, or and that's great, because we've had other dads on the show. Obviously, you're a dad, and we've had different experts on the show, and so I think they enjoy the fact that they can kind of listen like a fly on the wall and get advice and hear grievances that maybe address some of their pain points.
If you are outside the U.S., please send us an email at podcast@dudestodads.com.
Yeah.
And let us know where you're from, some of the issues that you're having. I think that'd be cool to kind of see just that commonality. I mean, that's the reality is, I'm sure there's some nuances within certain countries.
But I imagine it's almost the same thing, except you're.
And even states within the U.S.
Oh,
I mean, it's like, I don't deal with farmland and the troubles of
don't you hate it
the cows in the morning. I mean, that's not what I do.
My son keeps leaving the tiller outside of the barn.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things obviously that not all of us will deal with.
Right, but the
fresh made guacamole. Not everybody does that.
Right, exactly.
I was having that conversation this weekend with how people outside of California just don't deal with guacamole. Yeah. And it's so big here.
So I was up in Mammoth, previously, and that one of the lady was kind of sitting next to us and was saying that she didn't understand the concept of fresh avocados, because she's from Minnesota or Michigan or something. I think it's Michigan. And she's like, yeah, I came down here and people were talking about they have an avocado tree or a pomegranate tree. And she's like, that's so exotic to me.
I made guacamole this past weekend up when I traveled to Oregon.
Yeah, just grab a couple of avocados. All right, good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's just funny. It's just the differences around the world. But the topic for today is raising children without gender bias.
Yeah.
Do you know what gender bias means?
Leaning towards the male or the female in terms of like activities or
Perfect.
Yeah.
So some of the articles that were written, and I'll put some references, on the page that we have this on. We're talking about feminism and so a little of it was more slanted female, like acceptance of female activities, or that females can do what males can do. Sorry, I'm trying to articulate that properly.
No, but that makes sense.
But I'm trying to make this, as that was a gender bias article, I'm trying to make it less gender bias.
Sure.
By talking about, by both boys and girls.
Sure.
It's basically that, men and women should have equal rights and opportunities and such. And so, younger girls, younger boys should see, openness, endless possibilities in front of them. We shouldn't limit them. That's the theme, essentially.
Okay.
The difficulty here is, as I was preparing this, there's sort of that argument about celebration of men and women and who we are, who we are and how we are different.
Right.
I think I had mentioned to you is that, I've done some work personally, on myself and things. And a lot of it is talking about manliness and how, the roles that we have and sometimes how those, get into your life. I mean, all the stress of work and, all this kind of stuff.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But, males and females experience those kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at the same time, how do we not be biased for our kids to show them sort of openness, but yet at the same time appreciate that there are gender differences?
That's kind of my thing. Is that
it's hard?
It is hard because I'm all about equality and there are.
But what about opening the door for somebody?
A lot of women that I'm with, even if they're not people that I've dated or anything, they're always surprised.
Right.
You're such a gentleman. They're not used to that.
The chivalry and gentlemanness. That in itself, though, is a very biased thing.
It is. Like, you can't protect yourself. You can't open your own door. I guess if you were to think on those lines. But I'm like, I don't care if you open it or not. I'm being polite.
Right.
And that's the way I was raised.
Well, the question is then, would you open it for a man too?
In some cases, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I wouldn't. But I would go out of my way like I would.
Let me get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You wouldn't say like,
hey, dude. One time I did. I was like I was talking to a friend of mine. And I opened the door for him. He's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Shut up, just get in the car."
Did you come around the car?
No, we were like walking towards my car, and then I opened the door for him, and he's like, "What?"
Yeah, I mean, the differences obviously are engraved in our history, from caveman days of hunters versus gatherers,
and to get on the saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah, I mean, no, there was differences.
There is, and I think there are differences that you have to celebrate. Men are statistically are physically bigger,
right?
And women can carry babies, and so therefore the men have to go out there and make the hunt, and women have to, are perpetuating the race,
right?
So we have to protect them,
right?
And so there's a lot of things that just come out of that.
There's a play I saw many years ago, Defending the Caveman. Have you ever seen this thing?
No.
It's hilarious, but that's exactly what it's about. It's the guy stands on stage and he talks about everything from the caveman days all the way to present day. Like, as an example, hunters and gatherers, but nowadays, like, women will go into shopping, to go shop, and they'll go through all the racks. They're gatherers. They're just looking at all the racks of clothes and all that. Versus the guy will say, "I need a red shirt, in an XL." That's what he goes shopping for. Yeah. And he's a
beeline. Don't get it.
Knows
leave.
Exactly what he needs.
Yeah.
So but it's a comedy, and it's all kinds of sketches and all this stuff about that.
That's awesome.
It's one thing about celebrating the differences, but as for our kids, I think the point of it and the point of these articles, as well as why I wanted to select this topic, was understanding that, how important that equality is in many instances. And the reason it hits home for me is I have both a boy and girl. Mm-hmm. And, constantly am challenged and thinking about, is this okay for my son? Is this okay for my daughter?
Right.
Am I being equal in those scenarios? Can she do that just because, all kinds of, that comes up a lot.
Right.
And so I thought it would be an interesting topic to sort of touch on. There's a couple steps from an article that I had gotten. I'll put it up on the website, but I think it was like 5 steps of how to raise a gender bias child, and kind of what some things to do. So the first one was simply just having a strong bond with your child.
Right.
Having that strong bond allows you to communicate more, allows trust, allows all these things. And so they will, in a sense, look to you and feel confident and do those kinds of things, so that when you do have those opinions or you have those things, they're going to listen and they're going to hear you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a first step, a foundation, if you will.
Sure.
The second step was, don't pass the gender bias to your kids yourself.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you're doing things and saying things, like, I mean, there's horrible jokes, that could be said in many instances.
Right.
And sometimes you may think them.
Yeah.
But when your kids are there, you might not want, to do a woman's place is blah, blah,
exactly.
whatever you're saying, you've got to be conscious of that.
Sure.
So that, your child is not repeating what you're.
And they'll naturally hear the thing you don't want them to hear in that conversation.
And they will repeat it many times.
Exactly.
In the middle of a party when you don't want to hear it. Yeah. The third is provide your child non-traditional toys. And we've had some discussion about, why do they make pink this and blue that?
Yeah.
For boys, and even, many different retailers and things have gone away with that. There are certainly conditions that we do and we make over the years that has made that happen. I mean, when think about the color selection of your baby's clothes.
Right off the bat.
It's
like,
they hear you're having a girl.
They give you the pink
So that's why a lot of people now do greens and yellows and, it's like it could be anything.
Yeah.
You don't do that. Pink is just traditionally a very girly thing.
Feminine color.
So I think, that's one of the things when you start to do toys is thinking about toys that could be either gender. So as an example, your child maybe shows an interest in cooking. It's a boy.
Yeah.
Get him a kitchen set. Who cares?
Right.
I mean, that, versus thinking, well, that's for a girl.
Right.
Because she, the girl is going to be the one to do the chores and the housework,
and the cooking,
or the cooking.
Yeah.
Which is just, obviously we see a lot less of that now, but it still exists.
Yeah.
It does. There's no question it exists.
Sure, for sure.
The fourth one, allow your children to participate in sports and activities that defy the gender bias.
Yeah,
So
it's a really good opportunity because I always kind of think of, girls do this and boys do sports.
Right.
And that's totally not true.
Well, as an example, my daughter is in karate or martial arts with my son.
Yeah.
She's awesome.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even have thought like that's a boy versus girl, but some people do.
Right.
My son took a dance class.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's the kind of, and it could be fun either direction. And I agree with those type of things. Activities, especially things, they're not gender specific.
Well, but they are often thought of that way. I mean, you look at as the sports, especially in sports, the gender gets more and more defined as the sport gets higher level.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
And as age happens too, because once you get through the puberty stage, it becomes a little different because the size differences change.
Right.
And the aggression level, strength. When I was 16, 17 years old, I don't think there's very many girls that could have fought me.
Right.
Even though I wasn't a big fighter. Maybe your wife. Maybe she could have. But, I was in college, let's put it that way. I was in martial arts. I was like lifting weights every day.
Yeah.
And I don't care how tough you thought you were as a woman at that point. We couldn't fight and have an even match. I'm just bigger naturally. Yeah. So it would have been an unfair fight. Now, if they did MMA, if they're like Ronda Rousey or something, she would have whooped me.
Right.
But that's a big
But that's an example
diagram.
right there. Just the sport of boxing or fighting or MMA or something like that. Yeah. That now it's obviously becoming more and more. There are women participating in it, but it's traditionally thought of as an aggressive,
That's a good word. That's the word I was looking for. Aggression is really associated with males. Yeah, exactly.
But what's interesting is how much attraction these females are bringing to the sport.
Oh yeah,
for various reasons. But
I know it helps that you have this like Ronda Rousey was like undefeated for a really long time until recently.
Yeah,
and then.
Another attractive female.
She's attractive, and exactly. So there's a whole level of that. It was like a sexy girl who's also a fighter and like undefeated, and
No, Holly Holm. They're both incredible. Specimens of human beings.
Yeah, right.
To be able to do what they're doing.
Sure.
So I think just allow them to participate in sports and activities that just it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like you said, it doesn't matter whether it's boy or girl. Right. And then the other is step 5. Give your kids responsibilities at home that, a little non-traditional roles. So whereas, I don't know that I might be able to argue. I might be able to argue this one is I don't think people necessarily do this because when kids are young, you give them chores, or you give them things, and it doesn't really matter. I personally would never think of a chore as a child, and especially in our house, that was boy versus another chore that was girl.
What about cooking? I agree with you. I'm just saying that I think traditionally, if you have a kind of quote unquote traditional household, the girls would help the mom in the
More
kitchen with the
often.
cooking more frequently.
Well,
than the
but then
men
it
would,
depends
or the
if
boys.
your wife cooks more than you.
Right. So if you
So like
grew
in
up,
my house, my wife does cook more than I do.
yeah, but you cook.
But I do cook.
Yeah, exactly. Like I cook some,
My kids love making the guacamole with me. On Yeah.
Is that really called cooking?
Yeah.
That's called cutting up some avocados and mushing them together.
Well, no, but I'm saying I make tacos or burritos.
Yeah. So I guess that I mean, like the traditional sense of preparing the meal, I guess is a good way to phrase that. And so I think,
But in many households, I mean, I know tons of friends. I mean, the dad is more responsible for that than the mom,
Right.
of preparing a meal, and chefs and everything else. I mean, so I think but that's part of it is understanding. Okay, well, the reason probably that my wife does it is because she has less hours at work, and so she takes on that role,
right?
Versus if I worked less hours and she was working full time, I would be responsible for it.
Yeah.
So it's not. I think that's part of it as well. Is like what is the role and the time of where your time, or where your time.
Yeah,
is spent.
and that's more so nowadays, especially with progressive thinkers such as yourself, where that you basically it's more it's based more on the timing of everything. It's not so much based on the gender roles.
Right. Yeah. So I think those are just some steps to how can we teach our kids to not be gender biased, or how can we do that? So there was another article as well of really, this one had a little bit more slant of the feminism to, how do we determine what is gender bias really?
Right.
And what can we do about it? So that was so in a sense they're kind of like the steps, but a little bit different. And so the first one, as an example, like probably easier to is to teach your kid to ask, are men doing it too?
Okay.
So here's an example. Are the men wearing skimpy costumes? This is what this article said. So I'm repeating this.
Okay.
But as an example, and this was, like I said, this was written from a little bit of a feminist slant.
Yes.
That, in a situation where you're going to a party or something, are the men wearing sexy costumes? Less often than women. That's the case.
Do they have the figure for it? Is the question.
Yeah. That's a biased question.
Exactly.
Yeah. So here's another one. So are men's professional achievements prefaced by a note of their gender. As an example, the first woman to do XYZ.
Yeah.
It's there, or this is a woman owned business.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's a bias that do we do that for men as well? Mm-hmm. I think that's what the point of it was. There was a situation in the article they're talking about, like on the red carpet. Mm-hmm. And one of the actresses, and they asked, how do you balance work and your personal life? Is that a question that they would ask a man?
Right.
I mean, why not? We talked about that, how to balance your life.
Oh, yeah, exactly. It was a whole episode, right?
But that is something that would probably be more often than not asked of a woman.
Yeah. Yep. Right.
Wow, you work full time, and how do you take care of your family?
Yeah.
But meanwhile, the guy's doing the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think that's something that to consider. So just asking, like, are men doing it too?
Yeah.
This is, like I said, feminine slant. Another one. Point out gender biases when you see it, like the pink toys versus blue toys. But the truth is, like, who cares about that?
Right.
The kids don't care.
Right.
They don't care until we make it at a point.
Right.
And you put a pink toy in the child's hand, and then all of a sudden she likes pink toys.
Right.
Or pink whatever, because we put pink in her hand.
Yeah, right.
And it's the same thing with a boy. And so really, you can see that in toys all the time.
Yes.
Gender bias all the time in toys. And so one of the things is to point that out and maybe not even purchase it. You know, if this is a really strong conviction that you have.
Right.
You know, here's an example. I was buying a baseball glove, and because my son said, hey, I want to play catch, I have to buy my daughter one too.
Yeah.
I did not want to buy a pink glove. But
that's all they had?
No. But my daughter really wanted a pink
she wanted a pink one.
Yes, she really wanted a pink one. Why did you want a pink one? Why not a blue one?
Yeah.
You know, or whatever.
Yeah.
So it was just interesting. That was the conditioning. It's like, no, I want a pink one. She's in martial arts. Guess what color her pads are? Pink. I would have, now I wasn't there at the purchase.
Yeah.
So I can't talk about it.
Yeah.
But I would have probably said, maybe go with a white or red.
Get something neutral.
Right. And so that was my opinion.
Yeah.
So, but that's what I'm saying is we perpetuate that.
It's so funny because like my head's flip flopping because I do sometimes I'm like, oh, you know, if they want to play with My Little Pony or whatever, then go ahead. You know, I don't care. It's feminine, quote unquote, and it's more geared towards women, and G.I. Joe might be more geared towards men or boys, I should say, and girls. You know, not to say women, but. Then pink pads on karate or what? Like what?
I know.
What's ridiculous?
Yeah.
A pink baseball glove? Like, just make it neutral. Like, who cares?
But that's the part of people are obviously demanding it.
It's so weird.
She wanted that based on the pinkification over the last couple of years.
The pinkification of society.
So all the stuff that I've tried to do has not worked. So don't
got unraveled with the pink gloves.
Don't listen to me. This is what the purpose of this whole thing is, to say, don't listen to me because my advice is not working. There's outside influences much more powerful than me.
Yeah, society.
Yeah. No, I won't even say it was my wife. My wife doesn't even care for
That's what I mean. It's like, it's not, it's
my
so
wife's
beyond
not
you.
a pink person. She doesn't care about pink.
Right.
You know, it's not like, oh, this has to be pink. You know, so I don't know. It's just, it's an interesting thing. The number 3, expose them to the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, let them see that people in different roles can be of different genders. As an example, police officers, there's women police officers. Kind of celebrate that, point that out. I do recall we were going down on our freeway here, and you can see the military bases.
Right.
And so I think the question came up, was like, are there women in the military? You know, like my kids didn't know because we call it Army men.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't, Army people, you know, I mean, that's what it's called, Army men. And so it's like, no, women can do it. They didn't know that because of all the other things that revolve around that. Mm-hmm. You know, they had never seen a woman in uniform, but certainly there are plenty of women in uniform.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, it's one that hasn't been crossed over too much. I know policewoman, you know, you get a lot of the things that, like, you know, the Army person or whatever. Is there a firewoman?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like,
I was going to mention that, firefighters.
I never see that.
Yeah, no, there's quite a few.
Even.
Yeah.
That's so funny because every time we say fireman, I always just say fireman naturally.
Right. Versus fire person?
It's fire person. Yeah, exactly. A person hole cover.
Fire helper. Yeah.
Yeah, I just...
no, it's a good point. It's a good point. I mean, there are... Now, that's the same thing. I mean, within that industry, there's a physical demand. Mm-hmm. There's a camaraderie that's very deep with that, you know, because they sleep and stay there and do that. So, you know, I'm guessing that maybe not a lot of women choose that profession.
Exactly.
You know, it just doesn't maybe.
And it has nothing to do with the gender bias. It has to do with just the natural propensity to be in that situation.
Right.
Is that really appealing to be surrounded by a bunch of sweaty men?
I don't know. I would guess that the men... it's hard to say. I'm not a firefighter, but whether they welcome that or not. Same thing in the military. There's a huge argument of that. Like, do they want that person next to them in the line of fire?
Right.
Do they, you know, no pun intended with a fire person?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and I can't speak to that really. I'm not in that situation. You know, in our world, in internet marketing, it's probably pretty even.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah, exactly. There's no man bias at all in our field, right? I mean, it's a person that does. If you're a project manager in the internet marketing field, you're a project manager.
Yeah, there's not really bias.
And they don't put womanager. Right. You know, they don't go overboard and just replace everything man with a woman.
Right.
But yeah, because there was a George Carlin bit about that. So what do I call a he-man? An its person? I'm going to watch that on David Letterperson.
Yeah.
You know, he's just, sometimes you can go overboard with the language, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you know, like a male ballet dancer. You know, that's traditionally a dance that might be for women. There's more, obviously.
For sure.
But there's men who do that. And so
but you do point it out. And that's another one that on the reverse side, you would point out.
Yeah, gymnastics. There's things. Yeah, there's plenty.
Yeah. Male gymnast. If you just said gymnast, you'd almost automatically think female.
Right.
You know, but if you say male gymnast.
Cheerleaders, same thing.
Oh, cheerleaders is a big one. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, same thing. There's boys who do that and there's girls who do that.
Right.
You know, so kind of pointing that out and exposing them. Yeah. I mean, exposing them.
Yeah.
My wife, who is a nurse, said that one of the best nurses she's ever had was a male nurse that when she was in labor.
Yeah.
You know, and he was great. You know, but it was rare, especially in labor and delivery.
Yeah.
You know, to have a male nurse.
Sure.
You know, but it's just interesting. I mean,
there's another thing about the whole male female thing, and then the reverse side, like. It was, I think it was Jay Moore. He was like, don't put an M in front of everything and assume that just because it's an M in front of it, it's a male. You know, like moobs. Like that's not what they are. They're just that, and the man has them. And it's like, you don't call a guy a male who's anorexic manorexic. Right. You know, it's like, it doesn't make it male just to put an M in front of it. So that's
totally,
that kind of thing.
True.
Too.
What about a nanny?
Oh yeah,
a manny.
A manny.
They call it a manny.
A manny.
It works.
Yeah,
it works. So yeah, it's just exposing them to these things is, you know, that's part of the thing of, I guess, making it a little less gender biased.
Sure.
You know, and then number 4 is, you know, have the discussions about. So in addition to just exposing it to them, I think we had said, just, you know, have a discussion about it. There's sexism too. I mean, in books, movies, life in general.
Yeah.
You know, if you bring up these kind of topics when they happen, you know, it could happen at school with what they're learning. There's books all the time. You know, I think that's actually the next one. But there's always opportunities that, you know, that when you learn about history, you know, and there's this that happened in history, it's often gender bias or, you know,
or race bias. But like, when did women get allowed to vote? Like, what year was this? It was 1900s, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
And so a lot of our transitions, we exponentially have increased our togetherness as a human race within the last probably 4 decades.
Right.
You know, so.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the 5th one was adjust books to your liking. So this one was interesting because kids' books often use genders, you know, for all kinds of roles, and said like the girl brushed her teeth and blah, 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 blah.
Sure.
Well, I mean, which I don't know if this is a great example, but instead of like using like the girl did this or the boy did this, you say kids could do this. You know, you can make it so that it's universal. Now, if you're talking about a story and it's some girl, fine.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't really add much to the story, what's the point?
Right.
You know, what's the point in making it, you know, oh, she was so scared. Why can't it be a boy that was scared? You know, or vice versa. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you'd have to look at the individual story on an individual basis, but it's the idea. It's like, you can adjust that as a parent to not make the woman look weak, the man look strong.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's those kinds of themes in books often that just perpetuate a stereotype and perpetuate that kind of
stuff. A lot of fairy tales probably have that similar.
Yeah, no, it's always it's always a prince.
Yep. Coming in
and saving the princess.
Saving the princess.
Which, you know, it's funny how those are, you know, that's all of Disney and all of everything.
Pretty much,
you know, it's just, it's a very, very gender specific role that each one of these has.
Sure.
You know, they try to do something, you know, Dora the Explorer. Okay. I mean, that was something new. It's like, you know, the woman, a girl, she was able to learn and teach. But I mean, yeah. Okay. So those are those kind of roles that, you know, they're trying to do.
Yeah. And that's over the last, 20 years or so?
10.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that's an important thing. Then the last one was teach children to advocate for themselves and others. So once you identify this and you help them identify it, they should really feel comfortable with speaking up if they have an issue.
Yeah.
You know, so that could be in school, that could be in any type of environment where they see that something wasn't right, you know, where they felt like it was unfair. A situation that it was unfair or it was inappropriate or something. And, you know, let's take a step back for a second. We're not, you know, I don't think I'm advocating that like we have to be so politically correct that it's ridiculous.
Right.
But at the same time, when I now have a son and a daughter, I don't want to limit either one of them to what their possibilities are.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what happens when you do a lot of these things in their roles, and they say, "Oh, well, I can never do that."
Yeah.
And I think parents think often that they're not doing that, but the reality is, we're all guilty of it.
Sure.
I think I mentioned, this just popped in my head. I mentioned in a previous podcast, like I think 2 podcasts ago, about playing really rough with my son.
Yeah, exactly.
Why was I not doing that with my daughter?
You're throwing them in the pool, and you thought, well, would your daughter probably enjoy that too?
Yeah, absolutely. And she did.
And she did.
And she did enjoy it. And so that's that kind of thing. But I had to think about it because it wasn't my first reaction. It's like, oh, hey, I want to play rough. Let me go grab my daughter.
Right.
That wasn't my thought. My thought was my son was right there.
Yeah.
I'm going to, let's play rough.
Right.
And so that kind of thought process, and it's not, I'm not wrong per se.
You're right.
But my daughter is a tough little cookie.
Yeah, exactly.
She likes to, she can hold her own.
Yeah, she does karate.
Yeah. And so, I want to make sure that I'm not limiting what their opportunities are and what the possibilities are for them. So at the same time, I think it's wonderful to celebrate being a woman and a girl.
Yeah.
And the differences of that.
That's
the hard
too.
part.
So, and I think there's a fine balance between those things, because I don't believe in going too far overboard where we're like, yeah, we're all exactly the same. We should be treated exactly. No. There are certain differences that should be celebrated, and that's a good word for it, because it's more about let's explore the difference. Viva la différence. Like that's what it should be.
Same thing with culture. Same thing with ethnicities.
I think I told you this before. I went to USC, and I had never been exposed to so many different cultures simultaneously in my life. And so because I came from a small town environment, all of a sudden I'm meeting people from all different parts of the world. And for me, it was more intriguing. So I had asked questions about their culture, like, what is that? Or how do you say that in your language? Or whatever. What are you eating right now? It was so awesome to me. And I just really appreciated it. Whereas some people were like, oh, it's different. I don't want anything like that. So they didn't feel threatened by me, because I was more like, I want to understand. I want to be a part of whatever you're doing, because it's awesome.
Right.
And I hope they would feel the same about me if they had really were into something that I was into. So, but there's unfortunately too many people that try to use those differences to put other people down. And I think that's where the problems are, is that we go too far on the other direction. So we try to make everything too PC and too much the same, and we don't celebrate differences enough. And that's where we really need to draw the line. So we need to kind of swing that pendulum a little back over and go, no, be beautiful, be feminine, do whatever you got to do. But if something goes down, throw a right kick at their head, whatever,
right.
That's what
with that. No, you're absolutely right. I think it's, I'm just feeling, I think, a little bit more sensitive to that because of having the children. That
that's kind of cool. You get to practice both of them,
Yeah. Well, no, and the same thing for my son. Like, why do I want to limit if especially if he had an interest in something that
you like dance, like you said.
I mean, or something like that. He tried it. He was like, no, but it had nothing to do with the fact that it was feminine. It was just, I'm not into it.
Yeah.
So those are interesting things, and just having that balance.
Yeah.
Where you can do both and you can do it. So yeah, with that,
that's society.
I know. We're solving the world's problems here.
Yeah, one step at a time. One podcast at a time.
One podcast at a time. We're going to change everything in the world. So if you have any feedback, we'd love to hear it. podcast@dudestodads.com is our email.
Yeah.
Send us ideas, feedback, criticisms.
Yeah, if you have something you want to hear on the show, let us know. That'd be great. If you can also go to iTunes and or Stitcher and give us some 5-star ratings, that'd be great. Leave some comments in the iTunes feed or in the Stitcher feed. That's how we get our show perpetuated, and we really appreciate the feedback.
And from those from Slovakia, hello.
Yeah. Nastaravien, which is actually the Slovakian word for cheers.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I dated a Slovakian girl.
I was going to say, all the drinking related.
Yeah, I do.
words.
Unfortunately, where my habits lie.
All right. And with that, Alan, thank you once again.
Thank you.
We will see you next week.
Have a good one.